and welcome to CHCO Television's brand new show, One-on-One. I'm lucky enough to be your host, John Higgins, and I will tell you this, it's awful good to be back. We are coming to you on location. That's right, we are not in the studio. We're coming to you on location at the iconic Carman's Diner. Been here for 60 years, home-cooked meals, homemade pies. Yep, we're here. And we are going to be filming throughout St. Stephen, as I said, as the season goes on, because we want to bring it out of the studio into St. Stephen. This is where the show is going to be about. St. Stephen's going to be the star, right? I'm going to be the lucky guy that gets to introduce you to different people who live and work within St. Stephen. Speaking of that, my first guest, I wanted to really start this off with a bang, right? I know I did. Please welcome our news director from CHCO-TV, Television, Vicki Hogarth. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me as your very first guest. It's so exciting.
Isn't this something?
Well, I love any excuse to come to Carman, so this is
yeah, you're like
even
everybody
better
else.
Excuse.
That's right. That's right. Well, as I said, how this developed, how did this come about, right? We did the other show from the studio. Well, our producer, as you well know, is Florence Mitchell. And Florence called me and said, we're bringing you back, buddy, but we're going to do it in St. Stephen. This is going to be about St. Stephen. We're doing it in St. Stephen. And I said, whoa, we can do that? She said, we sure can, and we're going to do that. So here we are. And again, the show is about St. Stephen. The positive things is what I like about St. Stephen, and there's tons of them. I don't know, Vicki, sometimes, and I can't think of anybody any better to talk to than you about this. Sometimes we think, oh, we're from a small town and it'd be so nice to travel, it'd be so nice. Oh, wouldn't it be great to be? You did it. You had a career, a very, can I use the word famous career? You interviewed countless of celebrities. You've worked major magazines, and you're home.
I feel like I was trying to work my way back here the whole time, though. I just thought it would happen at a later stage in my life.
Right.
And it feels like a bit of a life hack when you realize you can do it now while you're still working. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of people who are still in the workforce have felt the same way, that the goal probably means every time to go to a bigger city. Okay, you made it there. Maybe you go here next, right?
Yeah.
But I think the world is rapidly changing, and for the better, where you can do a lot of careers in a small place. And every vacation I was back here, that's all I ever wanted to be in my free time, was just in a small town, in nature, with family and friends. And, I'd go back to a big city, Montreal or Toronto usually, and I was in Toronto especially. As fun as my career was, I didn't have any relatives there. My cousin T.D. McDonald, who some people might know, was there at the same time as me, and my cousin Katie McDonald at one point, and it was so nice to just have one relative. And then when I figured out that I could actually work and live here again, it's the whole package for me. It's the small town life that you feel like when you're working, sometimes you only get on vacation, and we all know that. This is a resort type vacation for people in the summer. They come to our part of the world.
Right.
But when you live here and you realize you can, it feels like you've somehow figured out life, right? And then my family's all around here. So my family's St. Andrews, St. Stephen.
Yeah. Your family lives in St. Andrews or from St. Andrews.
They are, I get this question a lot because of my dad's career. My brother and I didn't live here. Growing up, we moved around.
Right.
Our family is all from here. My mom's side of the family were going back loyalists, the Mallory family, and the Hewitts as well. So they're like really old school St. Andrews folk.
Exactly.
I think they were originally, this is family legend. I have to check if it's true. It's either they were on the Mayflower or the Hector, which is the boat that came after the Mayflower, which isn't as famous as the Mayflower. So we like to say we were on the Mayflower, but I think it was the Hector. They came to Plymouth Rock, and then eventually they were in Rhode Island, my mom's side of the family, and then they were loyalists. So they came, floated their homes over.
Up St. Andrews Bay.
Started their life again in St. Andrews. So When I say everyone's my cousin in this area, it's pretty true. It's pretty true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you are part of us. You are what I mean. You are. I just want to pick your brain just for a sec. Do you find that us locals, us people who have lived here all of our lives, do you think sometimes we don't appreciate what we have enough?
I think
don't want to
you
put you on the spot.
appreciate it, but what I will say is I think somehow there's this idea, and myself, I had it in my own life too, that, oh, there must be something greener, or maybe, if you stay in the same place, there's this idea that maybe you didn't go out and explore what was there, or you didn't compare what was so great. And there is this idea somehow, I don't know why in New Brunswick we don't realize sometimes how beautiful it is and why people strive to be here, even just for their vacation. But yeah, I think sometimes we just have this, like, I don't want to say inferiority complex, but I don't think people realize how special it is. They don't. It's not that they take it for granted, but I don't think they know sometimes in comparison to other places how amazing it is.
Because we've never seen that.
Right?
We've never lived that. And as I'm talking to you, I keep thinking about my daughter. She lives in Toronto. Okay, she loves it. I mean, her career is in Toronto. My son lives in San Diego. His career is in San Diego. But when they come home, they just go, whew. This is beautiful. It's so peaceful. It's so, I mean, we think it's dead.
I love it when it's dead. Do you like my favorite time is winter here, to tell
Is
you
it
the truth.
really?
Yeah. Summer is like, I say this, it feels like we all like work on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to our part
I know.
of the world. And in winter, it's like we're in a museum at night and we can run around and be crazy and we have all these beautiful things and it's just for us for a little while.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the quiet of winter, but that's after like years of being, like, I think I've been back. I call it home because I've never really had a home but here. Even if I didn't always live here, this always was home.
Right.
But for 7 years now, I think it's become winter. At first, I will say, I had that like, oh my God, I've been in a big city too long. Like, I don't have hobbies. Because my job only work. Like, my job was everything I did.
Right.
And I didn't, and your life changes as you live somewhere like this because winter, it's quieter. So maybe you pick up a club here or a art project here, and it's really made me honestly a more creative person, having a life that evolves with the seasons like it does here, and I'm so much more in touch with nature. I mean, if you live in a big city too long, you forget that stars even exist, right? So
I had somebody else say that to me. Look at the stars.
Yeah, I still go out for a night walk every night.
When did they start coming back up? They've always been there. Sorry. You left. They didn't.
It's been 7 years now of being home, and I still every night look up and think, wow, this is so beautiful. Or when I smell the ocean, it's just like, wow, it's right here. I get to do this every day. Yeah.
And this is what I want to bring to the show, is the positivity that we have here in a small community like this, in St. Stephen, that we should be proud of.
Right.
But it takes a lot of work, a lot of people to make things grow, to have things grow, and these are the people, some of the people I want to talk to and see what it's like. I want to talk to some of the people that are trying to make a living here. All right, how are you making out? How are you doing? And let's get their information. I want to get their information on what it's like. I don't want to use the word survive, but what it's like to live, work, and let's use it, survive in a small town atmosphere.
Well, I have a feeling this show too I have a lot of friends that haven't really lived outside of a big city, let's say, and I think it's following, because of social media, they follow. I think a lot of people thought I was crazy when I was like, this is pre-pandemic, so I was definitely ahead of the curve. When I was like, I'm gonna go move back to the small town where all my family lives. Okay, bye.
Right on.
And I didn't honestly think I would stay. I thought, I'll do this for 6 months and just take a little breather.
Wow.
As a journalist, you don't always have to be in a place. You can work from, I was doing magazine stuff before CHCO. I wasn't doing as much television at all. So you can get away with it. You don't have to be anywhere. So I thought I would do it for a little while, and then when I really was like, oh, I think I'm actually staying. I think I could do this, right? When everything with CHCO sort of unfolded, and I realized, oh, there's a possibility there. But with other people's professions now, as we all saw in the pandemic, the silver lining to the pandemic is certain offices have just shut down altogether. People work from home now.
That's right.
And then you look at things like Starlink, which is for anyone who's in a really rural area. It's the satellites you see that Elon Musk pioneered project. But I remember when it first was being piloted in New Brunswick, I did a news story with someone in the Kingston Peninsula who before that could not work from home. His internet was terrible. And we did the interview on Zoom to prove how great it is, right? And he said it's changed his life. He can work fully from home now. He doesn't have to travel in anywhere to. And so that's becoming there is this exodus right now and I see it in friends of mine that were either in New York, Toronto, cities that, are expensive. You might not, they're fun when you're young, but as you get older and some people have families,
that's right.
They don't want to be there.
That's right.
They're looking at a different way of life.
Find out a lot of people that live here in St. Stephen, I lived in British Columbia, I lived in Ontario for all my working career. That was enough of that. I'm back here. I'm going to stay here.
And I mean, the pandemic taught us some things, which is I'm glad we're like in this back to normal phase for sure.
Right.
But it's made me appreciate the space we have here. Like if something like that's to happen again, I mean, I know it was hard on everyone, but we were really in a wonderful place to have to, when I spoke with friends who are like one of my good friends in Toronto that I still keep in touch with regularly. I remember talking to her in the pandemic just on video, and I said, well, can you go like outside? And she goes, oh, you mean you don't want to? She's like, can I explain to you how I have to go outside? I have to get in a hallway in my apartment building, wait for the elevator, hope no one's in the elevator, get on a sidewalk that's crowded. And she's like, by the time I've gotten groceries, I have had 3 panic attacks and dodged so many people. I mean, that was at the height of everything. But just with that like fresh in your head, I think that you like appreciate space and contact with nature and small town life so much more. And I have no desire to. Cities are great for me now. They're like, let's go for a visit. But
we're going to go for a quick break, and then after we come back, I want to talk about the people that do live here that have the cottages and stuff. It's not a 4-hour drive. It's not a 5-hour drive. But the cottage is down the road. Anyway, we're going to be right back in a couple of minutes. Vicki and I are going to be right here, and by the way, the jukebox does work. Okay, see you in a minute. And welcome back to One-on-One. I'm your host, John Higgins. So thankful to be your host on this new show. Again, our producer is Florence Mitchell. She's the one that said, this is what we're going to do. Right? So this is what we're doing. And again, my very first guest, there's just no doubt it has to be Vicki. And Vicki has been around the world. We've all heard before that, Vicki has been involved with magazines, celebrities, jets, going here and going here. And she's home. And she said she's had to come back home. It was just didn't have to, but it was just a calling to come back home.
It's a calling. And you know what I didn't mention before is that, yes, it started off, my interest when I was younger was very much in celebrities. I covered Fashion Week too. I would go to the Emmys. I've been to Milan for Fashion Week. I did lots of one-on-ones with...
I read about Milan and heard about it, but you've been
really
there.
Fabulous, It's quite fab. I got to go to the Dolce & Gabbana show. It's super exciting. And I loved covering stars. But as you kind of age out of it in a weird way, I've interviewed I've interviewed Donald Trump, but I've gone to Toronto Film Fest a bunch and done one-on-ones with like Keira Knightley's one of my favorite actresses. I've interviewed Justin Timberlake in LA at the Chateau Marmont, big fancy famous hotel in West Hollywood. And I loved that up until a certain age. And then, the truth is when the internet really became part of your career, I started off in magazines, but I went to this American men's magazine, or online magazine for a while, and they had millions of readers every month. That was my first strictly online job when I was like 29. I think I went to work there. So my background with magazines and celebrities kind of put me in that direction.
Did you feel that when you moved back home that the pressure was gone?
No, because
But I mean, you jumped into this. So, I mean, you weren't home for that long.
I think there's always pressure if you work in media to figure out what's next. I mean, that's what I did when I went to that online magazine. It was like the magazine industry itself was dying, and I thought, okay, I better. And I'm 29, and I've like had my career for like not even a full decade yet. It was how I felt. It was like, okay, what do I do next? Okay, I should learn online. So I went there, and that's from doing that job, entertainment. We had to go every morning to a meeting, and we would go over our stats. This was like an American enterprise, so you had to say how many readers each article had.
Right.
And there were a number of stats, not just how many readers, how long were they on that article for, and things like that, because it was a money-making machine.
Yeah.
And so I started to realize that, celebrities aren't as interesting to other people as I thought they were.
There you go.
Yeah, like the one-on-one interviews you would do with these big stars, the average person doesn't actually care. And then moving into the direction I'm in now, where you're like very hyper local, and I can still monitor stats on like a different level, and it's very localized to Southwest New Brunswick.
I like that, hyper local.
Hyper local. People love the stars of their community. And I don't mean like faces like on TV. I mean like the person who runs a local charity that has a huge impact. It could be a local politician that does a lot of work that fights for their community.
Or a sports figure.
It could be iconic Susie, who I was hoping would make a cameo, but like brought us these beautiful mugs, and it's just like a face you associate with a brand like Carman's that is just like part of the fabric of St. Stephen, right?
Yes.
These are what I mean by stars. People care about them because they impact their life daily.
Exactly.
And so with CHCO, I can see who like when we have someone on TV, and a show will do astronomically well on the online element, because we are multimedia at CHCO. We've adapted so that we're TV, Facebook, website. But I can see that like people, when you put someone on the screen that impacts their life, that they know, and has a real measurable impact that they can see in their community, they're intrigued by that and they care. So yeah, and I mean, it's just with age, my interest in celebrities kind of died off. It was fun when I was young, but I'm so glad to have made this transition to local, and also doing something local. I can actually have a very visible impact on my community with a career like this.
Right.
Whereas what does another article about a celebrity really do? Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And if you can do it in a place like here, that in a lot of ways, I mean, we're lucky to have the career in our community as well, but New Brunswick as a whole is this news desert. And I think everyone can see that happening with, the three main Brunswick newspapers are now 3 days a week only. So we see even that. Your global news is not anchored here. CTV isn't anchored here either. They have some field reporters.
Right.
We're
here.
We're here.
We're from here.
And we're like doing stuff on that hyper local up. We're in the community. We live in the community. We're not parachuting in to do a story and leaving.
And exactly.
We're here. So you can really feel your career. I think sometimes there's confusion for people who think, you're doing something so big before. Big with like not always much impact. So what does that, it was flashy and fun, and I really got to refine my skills as a journalist, doing all those kinds of projects and see what's out there. But I've seen what's out there, and I'm really happy to take that and bring the best of me here at a time in my life where I know I can make an impact that's important. It doesn't have to be huge and splashy, but it's a place I care about, so I know my career can matter in a way that I don't think I had quite figured out when I was younger.
Yeah. And you say, let's be proud. Let's be proud of where we are. Let's be proud of St. Stephen. And we have talk about the. I just don't want to talk to the movers and shakers, which we will be talking to, okay? But I want to talk again, like I said, to the people who have lived. I do want to get people on. I'm thinking way ahead of myself. I do want to get people on like yourself who have gone away and have come back, and then every now again rattle us and say, look what you've got here. You don't have this. And I'm not picking on cities. Please don't think that. I'm not picking on big, but I've been there. I know what it's like. I was just before the break, I was going to, here, when you live in St. Stephen, you want to go to the camp, you want to go to the cottage, you get in the car, you drive for 20 minutes, and you're at the camp. You're at the cottage, or at the most, an hour or so. If you live in a city, if you live in Toronto and you want to go to cottage country, what are you looking at, 6 hours, 7-hour drive?
I mean, it depends if you're leaving at rush hour, right?
Yeah, well, that's the way my kids live. They don't live by mileage, it's how's the traffic.
What time of day is it?
Exactly, it's time, I was talking to a gentleman, and he was, this was outside the studio in St. Andrews, and he had moved here from Niagara-on-the-Lake, and his wife, and he was living in Bocabec, and his wife, she was going to go back to visit relatives, friends in Ontario at Niagara, and she said, "Are you coming?" And he said, "No." He said, "Why do I want to go back? Why would I leave this?" He said, "If I want to go to a city, I have my own private highway, which is our 4-lane to St. John, to a city." Or he said, "No, you go ahead, have a good time. I'm staying right here."
Yeah.
So, and I find that the more people that I talk to, that's the way to look. What happened when the housing was it the pandemic? I don't know if it was just because housing was cheaper here than it was in Ontario.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Still is.
It still is.
We think it's gone up, but compared to Ontario, it's quite
And they
crazy.
were buying homes and buying houses here, some of them unseen. Just said, "No, I heard about your lifestyle there. I heard about this." It's amazing, and I think that we should be, and these types of people is, I think, the people that we should really be talking to and listening to and try to get their inspiration on living. Do I use the word small town? We're a small town. There's no
We're
other
a
way.
small town, but you know what? I think it's what I love about this part of the world, and it will make me cry, so I'll try to say this without tearing up, is that in a big city, people are used to someone coming in, be it government or whatever, someone that they put pressure on to come fix whatever problems they have. And in a small town, people often have to rise to the occasion themselves.
Right on.
And fix what they need to do in their community. That's forever inspiring to me. And sometimes it is even the local council involved too. It's no slam on local politicians. To me, municipal council.
I agree with you.
My favorite politics to cover is that really local stuff, because that's what is going to happen in the place where you live.
That's right.
But then, you look at someone like Jim Stewart at Neighborhood Works. He's also with the warming station, and how people in the community have to say, okay, what issues are we facing right now, and how are we going to deal with them? In a big city, you never stop and think, well, you're just, someone else is going to fix that. At worst, I can complain online or make a phone call, but who's going to fix it? Here we look around, and it's just us.
That's right.
So we got to fix it, right?
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
There's something extremely beautiful about that. It's sometimes heartbreaking because you're trying to figure out what's the path forward, but it really comes from, and to cover that as a journalist sometimes is, I feel so connected to here because of that, because I also know these people too. You're covering people who end up being your local heroes, and sometimes your friends out of. Exactly.
That's, I find that all the time, people that I have in the show. I grew up with them. I know, wow. It's amazing. There are so many things that we should be thankful for living in a small town. I haven't heard this in a long time, and it's probably because of my age, but I wish I had moved out of here 40 years ago. You don't hear that anymore, because there was one guy that was on somewhere on Facebook or something, and we were announcing that the new show was coming, and he said, I hope he's aware of all the crap that's going on in the world. Well, I'm a news junkie, okay? I sure am aware of all the crap that's going on in the world, and it's so good to be here, and watching that and not being caught up in that, which you can pay attention to, but we don't need to get caught up in that. We don't have to live in fear like that.
And I think too, like, to your point, we're a border community, so we are, you know, a lot of times I think Canadians are consuming American news, and that might come out of a bigger news center. And sometimes news can be, when it's almost like they have to sell the news.
Yeah.
It can be overblown, and I get that, and I understand why people
and you would understand that
distrust
more than,
it.
Yeah.
But we cross the border, and our friends are on the other side too. So we have a different understanding here. You know, people can polarize the rest of the world, or issues, or people, or I mean, I find sometimes I hear my friends in a bigger city in Canada will look at America and think a certain thing.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Whereas I cross the border and I know people over there too. So it's different. Our relationship, though small, is extremely international, and there's this beauty in that too. That it really, yeah, we're like, no, we're not really that different from the U.S. because I go over a lot, right? I have friends on the other side. Yeah.
I want to thank you for, number one, for coming on the show, being my first guest, and for understanding the way that we feel about St. Stephen. This is your home. Your home, and we want everybody that does live here to appreciate that lives here, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, is bring on local people from St. Stephen to being filmed in St. Stephen.
And people will probably say, I do live in St. Andrews, and but close enough, right?
No, we're all one.
Yeah.
Okay, the way I look at it, we're all one.
I have lived in St. Stephen though, so just for on on Pine with my Uncle Jim and my Aunt Lynn Ross. Good. So I do have lived in St. Stephen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you ever so much for being my first guest, and I know I'm going to have you back. Okay.
I hope so, but I look forward to following the show as a viewer, John. So thanks for having me on.
Great, no problem. I want to thank Florence Mitchell, for producing this show, and of course Florence is here, so keep an eye on, make sure I do everything right. So until next time, thank you so much for joining Vicki Hogarth and myself on One on One. Again, I'm the lucky guy to be the host. See you next time.